Just give it a moment for everyone to enter from the waiting room. As a reminder, please mute yourself. Good morning. This is a hearing before the Licensing Board for the City of Boston. Today's hearing is an emergency license premise inspection hearing. Today is January 11th, 2021. Today's hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments of the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. Today's hearing will be recorded and will be posted to the City of Boston's website. Before I review some procedural matters, I will introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I am Chair of the Licensing Board, and today I'm joined by Commissioner Kiana Saxon and Commissioner Liam Curran.
Before we begin, when your item is called, please turn your video on. This is necessary because you have to be sworn in order to testify. Please also be ready to unmute yourself. I will call the items on the order in which they appear on the agenda. I will first read the item into the record. I will then ask who is present on behalf of the licensee. I will then ask who is present to testify on behalf of the Boston Police Department. And finally, whether there are any additional individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify. At that time, I will swear in all parties. The Boston Police Department will read the report into the record. The licensee will have the opportunity to testify regarding the alleged incident, and we will then proceed with questions from the chairwoman and commissioners. With that, we will begin with item 1, calling Crimson Ventures LLC, doing business as Cantina Italiana, located at 346 Hanover Street. The incident date was September 31st, 2020. The notice of hearing was issued January 4th, 2021. The incident description: failure to adhere to Governor Charles Baker's executive order limiting capacity to 25% of total seating capacity, excluding staff, and failure to adhere to the board's advisory regarding the same. Please note that on this license premise inspection notice, as well as all the others today, today's hearing will be limited to the alleged COVID-19 violation, and no other issues that were cited in the police report will be discussed. Those will be rescheduled for another hearing before the board. Is there anyone present on behalf of the licensee?
Yes, John DeSimone, owner, present.
Thank you. Could you please turn your video on? Thank you very much. Who is present on behalf of the Boston Police Department to testify?
I will be.
Detective Hernandez. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, if need be.
Thank you. Could all parties please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Detective, you may proceed with the police report.
Good morning. I'll be reading a police report which I wrote on Thursday, December 31st, 2020 at about 9:20 p.m. Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit under the direction of Lieutenant Detective Adrian Troy, performing checks of bars and restaurants during the COVID-19 emergency. While walking into Cantina Italiana restaurant located at 346 Hanover Street, detectives asked the staff what the count of patrons located inside the establishment was. The staff member stated he did not have a count of the patrons. Detectives learned that the capacity for the premises set at 180 patrons. Detectives discovered that the amount of persons seated inside the premise was approximately 100 patrons. Detectives reiterated the importance of the governor's and licensing board's COVID advisory on the current prohibition of more than 25% of the overall capacity inside of a licensed premise. The reduced capacity of this establishment would be 45 patrons. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Ms. Maria Del Vecchio. Ms. Del Vecchio stated that she would bring the establishment's capacity into compliance. As a result of a detective's observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 004565 for failure to adhere to the governor licensing board's COVID-19 advisory on the prohibition of more than 25% of the overall capacity in a licensed premise, overcrowding of the establishment. Ms. Del Vecchio signed for and accepted the notice. That is all.
Thank you. Would the licensee like to respond?
Sure. I wrote down a few notes if I may. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, all board members and law enforcement in attendance. I first like to note that Cantina Italiana has been diligent in their efforts to combat the COVID-19 spread. We've gone above and beyond adhering to all CDC guidelines. Because of this diligence and hard work by the management and staff, we have not had one staff case or one case that we know of that's been traced back to our restaurant. Regarding the violation, I think we can attribute this to, on this particular night, to the biggest challenge we were having was a 90-minute table limit. Because of this, we had a slight lag in the seating intervals of our reservations, causing our guests to arrive for the next seating time and congregating in the foyer in front of our restaurant, outside of the restaurant. So we made the judgment call to just seat all the guests at the table that we originally planned on not using, just so that we could eliminate any type of congregation and get the tables that the checks were dropped, because there were many checks dropped at that time, get those people out of the door. So, I mean, that was the most sensible call on our part. I don't know if it was the right call, but it was the most sensible call that we had. We've been challenged by this. Haven't had many nights like this, so we did the best that we could do at the time.
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you are trying to go above and beyond, but I have a couple of questions. This is New Year's Eve,
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
You can't tell me that you didn't know that you had a certain number of reservations coming in that night and not enough seats for them.
And it wasn't that we didn't have enough seats. We were very diligent in taking in the reservations. The problem
Okay.
was that there was a lag. So the 90-minute limit, we expected people to really get done
Okay.
and get out.
I'm going to tell you what I've told the other people that have joined us at these Monday morning emergency hearings, which we have never done before. This is unprecedented. I'm going to remind you again, we're in a public health crisis.
Sure.
And you have a responsibility as a licensee to follow the rules and regulations of our board. The advisories that we take time to send out to explain to our licensees that come from the governor's office and from the mayor's office. There is no excuse. First of all, why did the person at the front door not have an actual count of the number? If you have to reduce your capacity to 25%, why was the person at the door not able to give a head count to our licensed premise officers when they arrived?
Well, they have the count on Open Table on the reservation system, so I'm not sure why they didn't give the actual count of the people that were seated.
Okay.
We don't
You
have-
might want to take some time to reconsider your menu, because the 90-minute limit is a hard stop. We've told this to people before. There are no exceptions to the 25% seating capacity. I don't care if it's a holiday. I don't care if people are waiting in the vestibule. You'll have to come up with another system to tell them to wait outside. It's 25% of your seating capacity, and you're allowed to have staff above and beyond that. We are working really hard to help our licensees adhere to this. Should you receive a warning for this, there is no second warning. You will have your license suspended. Is there anything you don't understand about the governor and the mayor's advisory about 25% seating capacity?
No.
Okay. So you might want to take a look at your menu items to make sure that people can sit down, be fed, and leave within 90 minutes, if that's the biggest problem.
Will do.
Commissioner Curran, Commissioner Saxon, do you have any questions?
No, just a comment to add on. They might want to inform their patrons before remind them about 90 minutes. Encourage your patrons to look at the menu before they're seated, so they have a good idea of what they're going to order before they get seated. Because like the chairwoman said, the 90 minutes is a hard deadline.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, the board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you.
Calling Nicomar Inc., doing business as Strega by Nick Verano, located at 379 to 381 Hanover Street. The date of the incident is December 31st, 2020. The notice of the hearing was issued January 4th, 2021. Failure to adhere to Governor Charles Baker's executive order limiting capacity to 25% of total seating capacity, excluding staff, and failure to adhere to the board's advisory regarding the same. Is there anyone present today on behalf of the licensee? Is there anyone present on behalf of Nicomar Inc. doing business as Strega by Nick Verano?
This is Attorney William Ferrullo. I talked to Nick a few minutes ago. It was the first I heard of it, but he should be on the phone line if he's not on right now. He didn't have access to a computer.
Hi, I'm sorry, Nick Verano from Strega. I apologize. I just unmuted. I thought I was unmuted. I apologize.
As you are, I'm sorry, Mr. Verano, you have an echo. As you're on your phone, we will trust that you can raise your right hand when I ask you to be sworn in. Besides
Yes, ma'am.
Detective Hernandez and Sergeant Detective Gallagher, are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
So, ma'am.
Mr. Verano, will you please raise your right hand?
Yeah, yes,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And
I
for
do.
the record, before we proceed with the police report, the notice of this emergency hearing was hand-delivered by the Boston Police Department to the licensee on January 4th. Detective Hernandez, you may proceed with the police report.
Sergeant Gallagher will be reading this one.
Thank you, sir.
On 12/31/2020 at 9:05 p.m., Sergeant Detective William Gallagher and Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit, were driving down Hanover Street in the North End, monitoring the restaurants and bars during New Year's Eve. As officers approached the 300 block of Hanover Street, they observed a line of patrons waiting to enter Strega at 379 Hanover. Detectives parked their unmarked cruiser in front of the premise and called off with BPD operations that they were going to conduct a licensed premise inspection of Strega. As detectives made way through the front door, they had to push their way through people inside waiting to be seated. Detectives observed all tables to be occupied. One table had 7 patrons sitting around it. Detective Hernandez conducted a mechanical count of the main dining room, which resulted in 37 patrons. Detectives sought out the manager and spoke to Jasmine Zenek. Detectives reiterated the governor's COVID-19 guidelines and the importance of adherence to them. Detectives pointed out to Ms. Zenek the observations that they had made. 25% capacity of 54 would be 12 patrons. Tables of no more than 6 patrons, no lines or patrons waiting inside. Detectives, with the help of staff, dispersed the people waiting, both inside and out. Ms. Zenek stated that she would bring the premise into compliance. As a result, what detectives had observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued Strega license premise inspection notice number 004563 for premise failure to adhere to governor's COVID-19 guidelines. Overcrowded, 37 patrons found, 25% capacity equals 12. Line of patrons waiting to enter. Table of more than 6 patrons. Ms. Jasmine Zenek signed for and accepted the notice. Those are the facts.
Thank you, Sergeant. Attorney Ferrullo or Mr. Verano, would you like to respond?
Yes, this is Nick Verano. I'd like to just apologize. First of all, my sister and Jasmina, who were there that night working, they just put too many people in when they shouldn't. They had just changed that to 25% that week, and we had so many reservations for New Year's Eve, which is not an excuse. Unfortunately, I had a nephew that died of COVID during this, so there is no excuse. But they tried to do the best they can, but they made a mistake. They tried to keep people outside and waiting, but people were a little bit obviously rowdy because it was New Year's Eve and they had plans to go out. But I apologize. I addressed it that night when I heard of the detectives going in and said, well, we were wrong. We screwed up. Let's not let it happen again. And on the issue with the party of 7, they told me originally it was a 6, and then someone came in and it was one of those things that they just overlapped and they made another mistake. But that's about it. There is no excuse for it. It's a small restaurant, as everyone knows, and it was just New Year's Eve night, and we got 2-3 days notice. And if we told all the people just to leave, we'd lose the business completely because they'd probably be so pissed. But even saying that, I told them there's no excuse, and that's it.
Did you have anything else to add, Mr. Verano or Attorney Frula?
Nothing for me.
Chairwoman Joyce?
Yes, Mr. Verano, I'm sorry for your loss of your cousin. We are
My
living
nephew.
in your nephew. We're living in a public health crisis. I am sorry if it's New Year's Eve or any other night of the week and you have to turn patrons away. Should you receive a
You're right.
warning, should you receive a warning from this board and then there's found to be another violation, your license will be suspended.
Understood.
Do you have any questions for me about the governor or the mayor's advisories on the COVID-19 regulations?
I do not.
Okay. I suggest you retrain your staff so that they understand them when you're not on premise.
Already done, and we'll reiterate it again.
Commissioner Curran, Commissioner Saxon, do you have any questions for the licensee?
No, thank you.
Seeing no questions, the board will take this matter under advisement. Calling Vado Pazzo Inc., doing business as Restaurant Brico, located at 241 Hanover Street. The date of the incident was January 9th, 2021. The notice of hearing was issued January 9th, 2021. Failure to adhere to Governor Charles Baker's executive order limiting capacity to 25% of total seating capacity, excluding staff, and failure to adhere to the board's advisory regarding the same. Is there anyone present on behalf of the licensee?
Good morning, Attorney William Ferrillo, 28 State Street, Boston, Mass. On the line should be Joseph DePasquale.
Yes, present.
And as you are on the phone, we will trust that you raise your right hand. Again, I specifically requested at the beginning of this hearing that all parties be on camera. Who from the Boston Police Department will be reading the report into the record?
I will be.
Thank you, Detective Hernandez. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify regarding this matter?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, if need be.
Thank you. Could all parties please raise their right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Detective
I do.
Hernandez, you may proceed with the police report.
Morning. I'll be again reading a police report which I authored on Saturday, January 9th, 2021, about 6:05 p.m. Sergeant Detective Gallagher, Detective Hernandez assigned to the licensed premise unit under the direction of Lieutenant Detective Adrian Troy were performing checks of the bars and restaurants during the COVID-19 emergency. While walking into the Brico restaurant located at 241 Hanover Street, detectives asked the staff what the count of patrons located inside the establishment was. The staff member stated he did not have a count of the patrons. Detectives learned that the capacity for the premises set at 170 patrons. Detective Hernandez performed a count of the establishment. Detectives discovered that the actual amount of persons seated inside the premise was 63. Detective reiterated the importance of the Governor's and Licensing Board COVID-19 advisory on the current prohibition of more than 25% of the overall capacity inside the licensed premise. The temporarily reduced capacity for the establishment would be 43 patrons. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Mr. Nick Vastitas. Mr. Vastitas stated he would bring the establishment's capacity into compliance. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005479 for failure to adhere to Governor's and the Licensing Board COVID-19 advisory on the prohibition of more than 25% of the overall capacity in the licensed premise inspection, overcrowding of the establishment. Mr. Bastidas signed for and accepted the notice. That is all.
Thank you, Detective. Attorney Frullo, Mr. DePasquale, would you like to address the alleged incident?
If I might, just some questions for Detective Hernandez. Simply, did it appear the restaurant was following all the rest of the COVID protocols as far as separations, et cetera?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and this restaurant's on 2 different floors with 5 different rooms?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Detective. Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, I'm not offering these as excuses, but rather in way of explanation. Unfortunately, both Mr. Frank DiPasquale and his son Joseph, who's on the line, were on vacation last week. Joseph DiPasquale flew back yesterday to be here for the meeting today. And as this board probably knows, they have multiple restaurants in the North End, and they're always present. And I think the detectives would acknowledge that as well. I would also make note for the board that several other of their restaurants were inspected that evening without any incidents. We simply had a situation where we keep track of it in terms of the reservations, but that day, since it was this past Saturday, they opened for lunch because there were a number of people in the neighborhood, and some of that lunch period ran over into the earlier reservations that started between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. Again, not as an excuse, but as an explanation.
Pasquale, did you have anything to add?
No, that is all.
Mr. DiPasquale, how come the person at the door did not have a count, especially when we're trying to work within a 25% seating capacity? I would think that would be very important for the staff member to know.
Yeah, it absolutely is. We have talked to everybody, and we will absolutely have that next time they come in. It was just a slip on our end.
Do you have any questions about interpreting the governor or the mayor's COVID-19 advisory?
I do not.
I'll tell you right now, it's expected again, and there are customers at your tables. Our licensed premise officers will ask them to leave immediately. They will not be able to finish their dinner or pay for their bill. I suggest you take another look at the advisory and reach out to us if you have any questions. Should you be before us again for any COVID violation in this public health crisis, your license will be suspended. Commissioner
Okay,
Saxon,
thank you.
Commissioner Curran, do you have any questions?
I'm just curious, what was your latest lunch time? You said it went from lunch into dinner, it bled into dinner. So what was your latest seating for lunch?
The difference at lunch is that they do allow walk-ins for lunch. So people were coming in at various times through 4 o'clock, 4:30. As mentioned, our reservations start at 5 o'clock for dinner. So some of the holdovers from lunch were still there.
I have no other questions.
Seeing no other questions, the board will take this under advisement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Calling Calamari Fisheries, Inc., doing business as the Daily Catch, located at 323 Hanover Street. The date of the incident was January 9th, 2021. The date of the hearing notice issued was January 9th, 2021. Failure to adhere to the Governor Charles Baker's executive order limiting capacity to 25% of total seating capacity, excluding staff, and failure to adhere to the board's advisory regarding the same. Is there anyone present on behalf of the licensee?
Maria Fedora.
Thank you. Who from the Boston Police Department will be testifying?
I will be.
Thank you, Detective Hernandez. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the incident who wish to testify?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, if need be.
Thank you. Could all parties please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I
I
do.
do.
I do.
Detective Hernandez, you may proceed with the police report.
Good morning. I'm reading from Police Report, which I wrote on Saturday, January 9th, 2021 at about 5:50 p.m. Sergeant Detective Gallagher, Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the licensed premise unit under the direction of Lieutenant Detective Adrian Troy, were performing checks of the bars and restaurants during the COVID-19 emergency. While walking into the Daily Catch restaurant located at 323 Hanover Street, detectives asked the staff what the count of patrons located inside the establishment was. Staff member stated she did not have a count. The detectives learned the capacity of the premise is set at 20 persons. Detective Hernandez performed a count of the establishment. Detectives discovered that the actual amount of persons seated inside the premise was 11 patrons. Detectives reiterated the importance of the governor's and Boston Licensing Board COVID-19 advisory on the current prohibition of more than 25% of the overall capacity inside a licensed premise. The temporarily reduced capacity of this establishment would be 5 patrons. Detectives brought this to the attention of the person in charge, Ms. Maria Stevenson. Ms. Stevenson stated that she would bring the establishment's capacity into compliance. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005478 for failure to adhere to Governor's and Boston Licensing Board COVID-19 advisory on the prohibition of more than 25% of the overall capacity in a licensed premise, overcrowding of the establishment. Ms. Stevenson signed for and accepted the notice. That's it.
Detective. Ms. Fedora, do you have a statement to address the alleged incident?
I actually, I was not present on site when the inspectors came by. I was aware that we were going to be having an inspection, or at least at the very least confirmation of renewal of our licenses, which occurs every year, typically on New Year's Eve. So we were anticipating that occurring. I wasn't present, as I said, and I cannot respond to why my waiter, Miss Stevenson, who was there, overcrowded the restaurant. I had actually had a phone conversation with her just 1 hour before this, reiterating that we're at a 25% capacity, which our head count should only be 5. I said it's really important that we adhere to this, even as distasteful as it is. And so I really can't answer why she allowed more than 5 people to come in. I will respond that for the entire day's business, we had a total of 21 customers. We opened at noon. We closed at 9:30. So over the course of the 10 hours that we were open, the total head count we did for the entire lunch and dinner service was only 21 people. We also had, in addition to that, 9 takeout orders, which we are offering because we can't produce enough funds to generate jobs and keep our staff working. And the hardship, obviously, for this industry to operate at 25% is virtually, you can't do it. I mean, we've discussed every Monday morning, we wake up and say, we need to close down. If this is going to continue through the 27th, we need to close down. You can't even keep.
All right, Ms. Fedora, I'm going to jump in. We do sympathize with what's going on in the restaurants. I do not make these rules and regulations. They come to us from the governor and the mayor's office, and it's my job to enforce them.
I understand that.
I'm the regulator. So I'm put in a very difficult position to have these hearings when our licensees do not abide by the rules and regulations. You are here today because of the actions that brought on by your employees, not by anything that we did. I'm disturbed that your person at the door did not have a count. And I'm not being flippant here, but 5 people in the restaurant, while it's very difficult to operate, they should have known right away that 5 people was the maximum for any 90-minute period. Should you receive a warning today for this incident, the next time that you're before the licensing board for a COVID-19 violation during this public health crisis, your license will be suspended. Do you have any questions, Commissioner Saxon or Commissioner Curran?
No, thank you.
Seeing no questions, the board will take this matter under advisement.
Thank you all.
Calling Margia Corp. doing business as Giacomo's Ristorante, located at 355 Hanover Street. The date of the incident was January 9th, 2021. The date of issuance of the notice of a hearing was January 9th, 2021. Failure to adhere to Governor Charles Baker's executive order limiting capacity to 25% of total seating capacity, excluding staff, and failure to adhere to the board's advisory regarding the same. Is there anyone present on behalf of the licensee?
Yes.
Yes.
Adriana Travaglioni.
And Richard Treleone?
Thank you. Who on behalf of the Boston Police Department will be reading the report into the record?
Detective Hernandez, do you have that? I do not have that.
One second.
Sure.
Detective Hernandez will be reading the report into the record. Are there any other individuals with personal knowledge of the alleged incident who wish to testify?
Sergeant Detective William Gallagher, if need be.
Thank you. Could all parties please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Detective Hernandez, you may proceed with the police report.
Can I get the address one more time on this? I'm sorry.
This is 355 Hanover Street.
Just 1 second, I apologize.
I believe that was one of the ones we sent over this morning.
Yes, sir, I have it here. Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'll be reading a police report which Sergeant Gallagher authored. On 1/9/2021 at about 5:35 p.m., Lieutenant Detective Adrian Toy and Sergeant Detective William Gallen, Detective Eddie Hernandez, assigned to the license permit unit, were monitoring the restaurant capacities of the premises on Hanover Street in the North End. As detectives made their way down Hanover Street, they observed all the tables to be occupied inside Giacomo's restaurant at 355 Hanover Street. Detectives entered the premise in order to conduct a license premise inspection and sought out the person in charge. Sergeant Detective Gallagher spoke with Miss Litz Holmes and asked her for the restaurant's new capacity under the governor's COVID-19 guidelines. Miss Holmes stated that she was new and was uncertain of the number. Sergeant Detective Gallagher then requested to see the premises licenses, and Miss Holmes was unsure where they were. Detectives were able to ascertain the capacity by speaking to the owner over the phone. The listed capacity of Giacomo's is 28. Detective Hernandez conducted a count of the premise and came up with 26 persons. 25 capacity would be 7 persons. Detectives reiterated the importance of following the governor's and Boston's licensing board guidelines on COVID-19. Ms. Holmes stated that she would bring the premise into compliance. As a result of what detectives observed, Sergeant Detective Gallagher issued license premise inspection notice 005477 to Giacomo's for failure to abide by governor's COVID-19 guidelines, overcrowding, 25% capacity of 28 to 7, 26 patrons on site, failure to post common victualer's license, entertainment, ISD certificate. Ms. Holmes signed for and accepted the notice. Detectives also gave Giacomo's notice of emergency hearing on Monday, 1/11/2021 at 11 a.m. That's it.
Thank you, Detective Hernandez. Would the licensee like to address the alleged incident?
Sure. Again, my wife and myself were not present at the time. I was coming into the restaurant a little late that day when I was called about the over amount of people in the restaurant. Again, the girl that was there last night was new, but again, on that night, but she should have known that it was only 7 people. Luckily enough, we have been able to do some takeout where there are a lot of people coming in and out to grab their food. And again, I think the people that work there without me being around, which again, I apologize for, they're no matter how many times I've tried to tell them the guidelines and everything that we've tried to follow from day one. But of course, I think they're looking to make money that they feel they've lost, and that's not an excuse. But when someone puts down a check, they're looking to seat another party right away, of course. I think they're not maybe strong enough when a party overstays their welcome and they need to be told it's time to up and go. But again, I'm not trying to make any excuses. I know having that many people in the establishment is not right. My wife has talked with them because we never got our not being able to go up to City Hall and get the licenses in hand. I don't know whether they were mailed to the business itself because they were mailed to
the email that you provided to our staff when you filled out your renewal, and you should have called our office because we'll email it to you right away.
Yes.
Okay, we did
contact them, and we have it emailed. We just didn't receive the actual common victual license that we were told that it will be mailed to us. But
we'll make sure that copy is up in the restaurant.
Yes, now is. Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm going to repeat what Commissioner Curran said.
Yes.
You'll need to explain to your patrons before they sit down that they have 90 minutes to stay.
Okay,
And I highly recommend you explain to your staff, well, it's very difficult to do this while they are trying to make some money, that they are putting your liquor license in jeopardy. Your license will be suspended if you're found in violation of this again.
Understood.
I think it's very clear, very easy to understand 7 people.
I understand.
I have no questions. Do you, Commissioner Saxon or Commissioner Curran?
No, thank you.
No additional questions. The board will take this matter under advisement. Those are the only items before the board today. Thank you all for joining us.
You.
Thank you.